advisees, I just want to give you a little quick rundown of some of the tools we have to help you figure out your classes beyond the basic ones. So, first, if you click View All Your Courses and click Department of, just search for that, you should have access to our Department of Psychology and Neuroscience D2L space. This space has a lot of good stuff on there. There's updates about social club and things like that. I think it is really interesting to go ahead and click under the content and find our advising resources. So there's a lot of stuff in here, for all of our majors. The psych major requirements are what I'm going to cover. You got your core requirements. You got a course planner if you'd like. Pre-health, pre-PA, all that fun stuff. That's more for our neuro majors, but we have pre-med psych majors as well. There's some guidance about letters of recommendation for me. You can simply talk to me about it and we'll figure that out. Um, Minor requirements, that's none of you. So I just want us to look at what's expected. Just real quick. What do we expect you to complete by the end of your 4 years? This is just for the major. You are expected to take intro psych or transfer in, right? That's common. Intro to brain and behavior in the lab. Research methods 1 and 2 in the lab. And senior capstone, which you take your senior year. Then stuff gets a little bit tricky. You start noticing you have groups A, B, C, and D. Well, let's read what it says. Students must take 1 class per group except A. So it's okay. And 2 labs from the breadth courses. So you have to take 2 labs, 1 from each group except for A, where you have to take both of these classes. You need a minimum of 26 semester hours of upper level breadth courses. So let's just do some math real quick. Okay, so this is 6 semester hours. So you need 2 courses from here. You need 3 from here, 6, 7, 8, 9. 3 from here, 10, 11, 12. 3 from here, 13, 14, 15. 3 from here, 16, 17, 18. And that leaves you with 8, I believe it's 8 extra courses, right? Well, we also have to take some labs and things like that, so the math isn't perfect there, but you need 2 labs. What are your labs? So let's just go through the courses. You need to take Developmental 1, Developmental 2. Those are good courses. What do they involve? It involves a year-long project where you're working with a community organization. It's run by Dr. McCall. So you want to make sure, I think it's a good course for beginners. Might be a little tough if you're taking that and research methods at the same time. So, this is your first semester in the major and you're looking into next semester. I would maybe recommend taking 1 and 2, Developmental 1 and 2. Cognitive and behavioral science, you have to take 1 of these courses, learning and memory. Cognitive psychology. Cognitive psych involves the lab. Now that's going to cause some students oh, I don't want to take cognitive psych. Cognitive psych to me is it's a more shared discipline across the world of psychology. Learning and memory is kind of about rewards and punishments and conditioning and all that good jazz and all that complicated stuff. Cognitive psychology is about the mind in the middle. So cognitive is a very interesting class. It's one that, I know it's a lot of grad schools, PhD programs, a lot of interesting work that happens there. A lot of cognitive psychologists that do research. Learning and memory is similar, right? But it's about learning and memory. You're going to learn about memory. You're going to learn about learning reward structures and also how we remember things. Both are interesting courses, but I'm just saying give cognitive psych a shot. Don't just knock it because of the lab. In the biological bases of psychological science, this is the field that I am the least expert in, just to kind of put that in perspective. We have some cross-listed classes, advanced neuroscience methods. You can read more about that, or neurological disorders. Interesting courses if you want to take a biological basis of psychological behavior. Advanced neuroscience methods involves surgeries and interesting techniques with rats, so it might be an interesting study there. Behavioral genetics, genes and behavior, I think that's very cool. Neuropharmacology, another neuroscience course. That is going to be drugs and behavior, essentially. Sensation and perception is how we see, feel, touch, and so forth. And it has a laboratory, very interesting lab. I'm going to give all the labs a little shout out. I think it's an interesting aspect of our major. You might, I know labs take up a lot of time, but they're also pretty cool, give you a better in-depth understanding. Neuroanatomy and neurophys, that's exactly what it sounds like. What structures make up your brain? How does your body respond? So neurophysiology is the physiology created by your brain. It's quite interesting, but it involves things like your brain causes you to sweat, stuff like that. Also has a lab as well. Neuroscience cross-listed course. So that's our biological basis of personality category, or of psychological science category. Then we have the person and society science category. Essentially, I'm a social psychologist. I teach social psych. I teach the lab. Social psych is about social structures, groups, peer pressure, other people, how they influence us, all this really interesting kind of stuff, persuasion, other things like that. Of course, I love this class. It's a class I teach. The laboratory it teaches you how to do social psychological science. That's my goal with my lab, is to get you prepared to be a social psychologist. Psychology of gender is exactly how it sounds, studying gender, how gender, social constructs of gender, how it impacts behavior. Cultural psychology is the impact of culture on individuals. It's like social psychology, if, if social psychology studied one's entire history and experience. Questions like what is culture, what is language, how do we process the world, those are covered in cultural psychology. Psychology of personality. Personality and social are kind of interesting to understand. So social is about the society, like how other people impact your behavior, how social structures impact your behavior. Personality is about internal characteristics inside of you. Now, you should understand that personality and social psychology, while related fields, have very different perspectives. So if you're more in the world, or you're more interested in like personality tests and how those may predict behavior, then personality psychology is interesting for you. If you're more interested in how the social world impacts us and view individuals as driven by situations, that's going to be the social psychologist in you. Enjoy, and that's your person in society science. You got to take one course from there, and you clearly can take optional courses. Applied psychological science, we have a lot of things in here. Educational psych, industrial organizational psych. Now, educational psych is exactly what it sounds like. If you want to be a school counselor, that might be the class for you. It is offered sometimes, not super frequently, so keep your eye out for it. Industrial organizational psych, unfortunately, hasn't ever been offered since I've been here. It is about business psychology. I think it's really interesting. One day we might find someone to teach it. It's on the books. It doesn't exist. Health psychology, I've seen that offered, not super frequently, but it's around. That is exactly what it sounds like. Clinical and counseling psychology, very popular class in the major. So if you want to get that class, you're going to have to sign up early and you're going to have to be on time. Oftentimes, juniors and seniors only are the ones who get into clinical and counseling. The same for abnormal psychology, which is going to be next. Human sex, it's exactly what it is, about the human sexual response and behavior. Developmental disabilities and behavioral disorders, taught by Dr. Betjeman, I believe, most frequently, and is exactly what it sounds like as well. Abnormal, clinical. What's the difference? Abnormal is kind of like the foundational principles. Clinical is how you treat and help somebody with a disorder. Forensic psychology, that's your serial killers, that's that stuff, right? People, behavior, crime, serial killers, definitely topics in those courses. Neuropsychology lab. Neuropsychology is an interesting field. It's like, what do biological deficits do to one's psychological processing and perceptions and cognition and behavior and social functioning? Has a lab as well. Very interesting course. Don't know when it's going to be offered next. So that's all our courses, and I hope it gives you an overview of what they cover. Now, additionally, you have additional courses, and I'm going to recommend these for all of my advisees. Independent study in psychology, I'm not going to recommend. That's a course that you take if you really kind of like you really need to take something that we're not offering for some reason, and somebody's an expert in it, you have an interest in it. I've taught one of these in 10 years, and it was on police decision making, and that was with a student who wanted to be a police officer, but that was like a rare occurrence. Research in psychology, I do recommend that. Get involved in research if you want to be a PhD in anything clinical. You're going to need, if you want to be a PhD in clinical, you need to do research in psychology. It doesn't have to necessarily be clinical, that's a plus, but you're going to want to be doing research. I have an active lab. I study racism. You can come talk to me about it. I have a pretty big lab right now. I have about 7 students working with me on about 5 different projects. I'm working on my own. I really love research. So if you want to do research with me, hey, come talk to me about it. Special topics in psychology, don't worry about those. You might see a course that's of interest. It will count towards your major. But in general, they're rare, and it's when we're trying out new courses. Finally, we have internship in psychology. Every one of you need an internship if you want to work. A lot of folks are like, what can I do with a psych degree that does not involve going to grad school? Well, what you can do is you can work in marketing, you can work in HR, you can work in market research. You can do a lot of things advertising, that kind of realm, particularly with the social psychology, with the cognitive psychology as well. Some new fields that are emerging, user experience research, designing interfaces for things like Netflix. That's a thing that you can work in. Now, to get that job, you're going to need some pretty good internships. And so I would be looking for more than one internship. I believe you can take up to, well, in terms of the major, only one of these courses counts towards the major, but you can take as many of these as you want for credit, electives, the 120 requirements, which I'll talk about in a second. But you need internships to get work. And that is something nobody told me when I was an undergrad. And you need more internships, the better. Okay, this is internships and research experience. If you want to do what I do, you need to get research experience. Your internships are researching with us, getting into the Anschutz research program, contacting local professors. If you want to work after college in HR, you should probably get an HR internship. Try to start making that happen now. Internships do not happen overnight. They take like a month or two to develop and find. Okay, work in market research. I have some connections in there. Market research is like doing research methods, but for products and services and things like that. Very lucrative version of psychology. A lot of my friends work at big companies like Twitter and things like that, and they help design experiments and other things. One of the most interesting fields that's coming up, which I would, is user experience research. How do people use and deal with products and get frustrated and all that stuff? I think that's an interesting field that you can work in. There's this world out there that you don't know about because you think psychology is just about mental health, or it's just about maybe doing what I do, which who knows what I do. But ultimately, at the end of the day, internships, let's talk about them. Let's talk about what you want to do. Broaden those horizons. A beginning market researcher can make $60,000 a year. So it can really pay off. Um, the one weird thing, right? Go through your final checklist. Do you have the foundations? Do you have, your requirements here? Do you have your laboratories? Do you have capstone? Um, and do you make sure that you have all of your courses? This is a little weird. It doesn't really. So 633 foundations. That's the 14. 26 under here. So 26, 14. I'm not sure this is adding up correctly. Let me just kind of walk you through that a little bit. Um, oh, here you go. Classes from B or not. Okay, that's what I missed. So we'll go through the checklist. Foundations A, B, C, D, and E. Laboratory courses. Do you have 2 semester hours of lab? Outside of that, do you have classes from groups B through E that just count towards your other 2 courses? Senior capstone, which I think they counted in the 14, didn't they? Oh, they just put it on its own. Okay, that's fine. So now that's our checklist. Let's go through honors in psychology major requirements. If you want to run a senior thesis, do a project, that's going to be research, right? Then you can get an honors in psychology. That's something that's important to know. All the requirements are here. Maintenance of a good GPA. Select your thesis committee. Obtain IRB, IACUC approval or proposal. Write and submit a grant proposal. That's not that hard. Don't let that scare you. complete the project, and you complete 499 by orally defending. So, you got 2 courses you got to take in different semesters. First semester senior year, second semester senior year. Make sure you're doing that. Psychology minor requirements, not us, not my students. That's about it. Okay? So, that's all the information about the major that you need. What else do you need to know? Let's go back. Let's get our core checklist. So one of the things that students struggle to understand is like the core plus the major doesn't equal the total number of credits you need to graduate. You need 120 total to graduate. So in the core, you need writing analytically, freshman writing seminar. You need a communication intensive course, which you took. That was the paired course of the writing seminar. You need 3 to 6 semester hours of economic systems. In general, what happens here is you take EC 200 or EC 320. And with EC 320, you also got to take EC 330. Now, if you're in this situation where you took EC 320, you were business and got out of it. In general, those do often lead to being subwaived by your advisors. So I've seen that happen. So if you're in that situation, come talk to me. 3 semester of fine arts core. Fine arts, art history. It's usually the art history courses. It's not the making fun art courses. Foreign language, you need 2 classes in one language. 3 semester hours of literature, EN 250, EN 300, which is for English majors. Mathematics, you've seen all the mathematics stuff. I do recommend stats for life sciences. I forget which number that is. For psych majors, stats for life sciences is great and doesn't require any pre-testing. Natural science is you need 1 course in the natural science, and as neuro majors, you will have that course with brain and behavior. Any 3 semester hours of history, philosophy, 2 courses of religious studies, social science, which you will have, and public speaking. Your integrative course, sophomore year, you want to take the diversity core, then you want to take your other course as well. You have to take 120 total credit hours to graduate. That's 15 per semester. So you need 120. You need to check all these boxes, and you need to check all our boxes from before. That will get you graduating on time. In terms of other majors and other minors, you don't need one. If you want one, great. If not, really prioritize your future. What are your goals? A lot of my students are get in a rut by the time they're seniors. And their major mistake is that they have no work experience. They might have grades. They have no internships. They have no research experience. The only reason I am where I am today is because I took research as an undergrad every semester since starting with my junior year. And it gave me exposure to and experience with research design, which I love and use every day. So that doesn't have to be your goal, but if you want to do mental health, you need to be doing mental health internships. If you want to be a PhD in psychology, clinical or non-clinical, you need to be doing research with your professors. I will gladly take you under my wing if you want to study prejudice. I can use researchers all the time. We need help, so feel free to join. I don't really mind. Outside of that, what am I thinking here? Get internships in business if you don't want to do research or you don't want to do mental health. You can make good money in market research, marketing, advertising, right? Start getting that exposure now. Start making your own thing happen.